Let's talk about testing LuxOS. When you're testing, you want to make sure that you're running optimal conditions. It's very easy to run a test in suboptimal conditions and get different results than what you expect. For instance, a miner that's too hot, that's positioned in a hot zone in a container, that is already having hardware issues, things like that can throw off testing results. So you want to make sure that you're getting things like good, healthy ambient temperatures, somewhere between 55 and 75 Fahrenheit. You want a good variety of machines. So if you have a bunch of JPro 104 variants, you want to test on a large collection of those, 10 or so machines. If you have a bunch of Kpros, you want to test on 10 or so of those machines, because each machine can have its own performance profile and it's going to behave in a different way potentially. So giving you 10 or 15 machines to test with means that you can take the medium, the average, or what have you from that collection in order to come up with a final result. Hardware consistency, like I said, make sure everything is up to par in terms of hardware. You're not testing on bad hardware. That you're running the comparison if you're testing us against another competitor, another firmware provider, that you're testing the features one-to-one, the models one-to-one, same environment, same temperature. When you're measuring your power for your test, the S19 series does not have the ability to read its own power supply and therefore its own power consumption, where the S21 series mostly does. So when you're running an S19 test, try to measure the power at the wall. When you're measuring, or when you're running an S21 test, typically you can rely on the LuxOS GUI or API to report power consumption very accurately because it's coming directly from the PSU itself. And AutoTuner, we recommend that you run your tests with AutoTuner. AutoTuner is on by default, and that's going to help us get the best efficiency out of the machine that we can. That does take a little while to tune, somewhere around 20-30 minutes. So you want to have these machines on and running for maybe an hour to a day or so once you're ready to run the test. And we can talk about deploying LuxOS a little bit. Typically it's done through Commander. We do have some videos on that. On the testing methodology, some of the ideas that you can take home to design your test are: record a baseline power consumption. What is the power consumption of the miner while running Bitmain? What is the power consumption of the miner while running LuxOS over X period of time, measured either at the wall if a 19 series or from the miner's perspective if it's a 21 series. Now, Bitmain doesn't have the ability to read the power through the GUI or API that I'm aware of, but LuxOS does. So when you're getting your Bitmain baseline power, you might have to get that from the wall, even if it's an S21 series. I'm going to start at that -6 step. That's one of our most efficient steps or profiles. And from there, you can bump your way up. So if you want to see different efficiencies at different profiles, start at that -6 step. That's a good place to start with for testing. Like I said, competitor firmware, you want to figure out how to get their firmware to something similar to a -6 or to the default profile or to the +1 or +2 overclock profiles. Whatever profile you're testing, you want to make sure that the competitor is at a similar profile or power range or hash rate. Here's some examples of some of the efficiency rates and gains that you can see with LuxOS. You can pause the video here, take a look at that, compare it to your notes, see what you're getting. If you want to test the overclock side, you probably want to test the default +1 and +2 profiles, the default to give you a baseline, and then the +1, +2 profiles for safe overclocks. You can definitely go to +3, +4, all the way up to +8, but those, you really need to have an ideal environment. You need to understand what you're doing. And for testing purposes, the +1, +2 profiles are typically good enough. +3, if you really want to push it a little bit, but typically stay in that range. You're going to disable anything that's going to automatically adjust the profiles. So things like advanced thermal management, you want to turn those off or leave them disabled as they're disabled by default in order to ensure that temperature doesn't cause your miner to change profiles within the ATM thresholds, because that may disrupt your test is functioning and what results you're getting back from your test. If you want to test for maximum uptime, then that's obviously a little bit different of a test than testing performance for overclock or default profiles. Maximum uptime really comes down to temperature management. So things like ATM are actually going to be your friend during that test. You'd like to have ATM turned on for that type of test. And you want to run it for a period of time, because you're going to have differences in temperature throughout the day and the night. And you're going to have temperatures from day to day that differ. So running it over the course of 7-10 days, something like that, is going to give you a good baseline of how that miner is going to act during whatever season you're testing in, be it summer, winter, what have you. The big story here is that keep your testing consistent between Bitmain and LuxOS, and between LuxOS and other third-party firmware vendors. Have a wide range of hardware to test on. Specify different models for different tests. An SJ19104 is not going to function and test the same way that a S19J Pro 100 is going to. There's obviously a difference in the hash rate variance, so you're going to see a difference in the test results. So keep your models consistent, your temperatures consistent. Stick on one profile to test that profile for either efficiency or power consumption or whatever the target of your test is. Turn ATM on if you want to test out things like uptime and managing heat during hot or cold days.